Okay, so it should be working now.
Hello.
Hi, Sharlene. How are you?
Oh, the volume is really loud. Let me
Oh,
just
I'm
turn it.
sorry.
It's okay. Does my screen look okay?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
I can hear you.
I'm using a slightly different web camera, so I hope it works.
And I'll just I'll make you host.
Okay.
Because I probably won't.
And I'm going to try and put my presentation up.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see if I can share my screen here.
Yeah. But you're muted now. I don't know if that.
Okay, that's really bizarre because it said I muted my microphone when I was sharing. Let me try that one more time.
Okay.
And I'm just going to just say test a few times and let me know if you can hear me. If you can't, just let me know. Okay.
Yeah, that's really, it seems to mute you just when you share the screen, which is weird.
I wonder why it's doing that. I'm wearing, hold on, maybe I can change. I have AirPods on, but it shouldn't do that because I used it before.
Yeah. Don't know if there's, I wonder if they're connected because like I know that sometimes if you have to click on the button that says like,
yeah, I'm gonna try my internal. Bear with me here. It will pick up background noise. I apologize, but instead of my AirPods, but let's give that a try. And I'm gonna try sharing one more time. I'll just increase my volume here.
Okay.
And let me try sharing the screen one more time.
Yeah, it's still muting you, but I do think that there's a button when you go to share the screen. There's a little button that says in the left-hand corner.
Hold on, I'm sorry. Can you say that again?
When you go to share the screen, there's sometimes a little button in the left-hand corner that says that you have to click on to make sure the sound. Like, because you can have the sound on or off for when you share screen.
Okay, so there's something wrong with my sound here. Bear with me for a sec. I'm gonna try.
Okay, I've just switched to my web camera volume. Do you mind speaking again?
So yeah, when you go to share the screen, there's sometimes a little box that you can click on the bottom left-hand corner that shows up. And you have to click on that for the sound to continue when you're sharing the screen.
Okay. Computer audio connected. So that's accurate. Settings. Audio. Screen, so that could be a challenge. Hold on, I'm gonna try and had all my speaker notes on it, but I guess I can try without. Bear with me here. I'm just gonna go and mute for 1 second. Okay, let's try this one more time. Thanks for your patience. I'm gonna. Okay, so you can hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you okay.
Wonderful. Okay, I'm gonna try sharing my screen one more time. Hold on here. Sorry, just bear with me one more time.
Yeah, no problem. And I messaged the people in the waiting room that we're just doing a sound check. So.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, you're still muted. I wonder.
I wonder why it does that.
I wonder if I can unmute you.
Yeah. Do you want me to go back into the presentation and try?
Try, because I did push the button that tells you that you're muted, but I guess I don't know if you saw that, but I might be able to. Yeah, I'm just asking you to unmute, but I don't.
Great.
Oh, there you go.
No, but I had to hit the button. You can
co-host with me, and then you should be able to unmute me.
Yeah, you are co-host.
No, okay, so it's still, I don't know why it's still muting.
But I can.
But it says I'm sharing my screen. So if I go back
so now,
to
yeah, whatever you did is working now.
Can you still hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so whenever you're ready, we can start.
Okay. I will let everyone in.
Okay.
Usually I do like put the little promo Connectra video playing first, but I don't want to mess now that it's working. So I'm not going to do that. It's just like the little Connectra video. So
How about we play it at the end?
Well, I'm going to make you, I will make you host because I actually can only be on for like the first 20 minutes, half an hour. And then you can just when you're done, you just leave and everyone out, that's all you have.
Okay. Now, if I do continue to have muting issues, I guess people will have to help out then.
I'll stay on for the first 20 minutes, half an hour. So
okay.
I should think that if it's working, then I don't know why it would.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good.
But yeah. Okay. Here, we'll let everyone in. Okay, I think everybody should be in, so you can start anytime.
I can go ahead and start. Okay. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining for this session on how to use garden planning to your advantage. I just wanted to introduce myself. So my name is Sharlene Singh. I have a strong love for both gardening and nature. I actually grew up on a tropical island, and my great-grandparents were farmers and my grandparents were avid gardeners. I feel like it skipped a generation with my parents, but my brother and I both are active gardeners and both really love nature. I work as a garden coach and an ecological literacy educator. And so what that means is, an individual that works with ecosystems. So I teach school-age children and youth, and I work with businesses, and we teach students about how to use organic gardening principles, but also how to support the many ecosystems of whether it's insects or birds or plant biodiversity in the garden. I've done a lot of work in community development. I am a Master Gardener with the Master Gardener Association of BC, and just for my own interest, considering I've come from farming family, I was just really interested in regenerative agriculture. So I'm a graduate of the KPU Farm School, and boy, was it a learning experience. I wanted to acknowledge that I'm on the unceded territories of the Musqueam people, where I'm located here in Richmond. And the very interesting thing is musqué was a flowering plant that grew along the Fraser Delta or the Fraser River. So as we kind of head into this weekend where we're going to get a lot of snow at the end of February, and hopefully with the shift of seasons, I wanted us to take some time to really reflect on this quote about our interconnectedness with nature. And it comes from Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer, who wrote the book Braiding Sweetgrass. If you haven't read it, it's just a beautiful book. And so in her book, she writes, learning is connected to land, culture, and spirit. We, the two-legged, four-legged, finned, and feathered, plants and rocks are all related. We must always practice reciprocity through acts of giving and receiving. So how do we be good ancestors? How do we protect the land, the waterways, the air that we breathe? How are we kind to each other? And this lovely species is actually the Anna's hummingbird, which is the year-round resident and is a very resilient bird in our community. So as we come through this lens of thinking about garden planning, also think about how we can think of that act of giving and receiving and the interconnection between nature as the seasons shift. All right. If you feel comfortable either in the chat or if you would like to unmute yourself and you feel comfortable, I encourage you to share one thing that you're hoping to gain or learn from this workshop, potentially around garden planning, just so I can be mindful of your questions and make sure I incorporate some of those key points into the learning. So I'm just going to allow a minute for that, and I'll get our moderator to help me while she's with us. Would anyone like to unmute themselves or share anything? It's not.
Yeah, I would like to say something, please. My name is Joseph Morissette. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you, Joseph.
Okay, because I have, I go to GF Strong, the new garden. It was not working very well last year because I don't know what happened to all my crops, because I know the hummingbird ate all my tomatoes, as well as the Tetra. They built a garden, not garden, sorry, for my patio, a container for me to grow my garden. But the thing is, I don't know what to grow there. I tried to grow some stuff last year. It didn't do well, and that's why I'm here. Hello?
Sharlene, did you want to respond to each question or? Oh, no, yeah, no, I can't hear you, although it doesn't say you're muted. Hmm.
Oh,
Yep, now I just,
okay. Yeah, I just stopped the share. Sorry, everyone. I'm having some glitches with my my microphone. I don't know why. Thank you, Joseph, for sharing that. I'll go back to sharing my screen momentarily. Is there anyone else that would like to write anything? I see we have a note from Michelle in the chat, hoping to help students with disabilities interested in gardening and form an interest in gardening. That's great. And I'm going to give you some kind of foundational tips today to help you through that process. Okay, so I'm going to try again to share my screen. Please let me know, Rebecca, if there's any issues with audio, okay?
yeah. Yes, you are muted. So.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, so where do I start? And that's a kind of a pivotal question that a lot of intermediate or beginner gardeners ask themselves. And I've outlined a few steps that are going to help you through this process. So timing is really crucial. Timing when it comes to seasonal cycles with weather patterns and learning some of those key garden terms, but also planning a little bit of a garden plan month to month. Assessing your space. We're going to do a little bit of an exercise where we answer a few key questions that will help us understand what to grow in our space. And right plant, right place really is looking at the role of weather and temperature and understanding a plant's growing needs or requirements. This is the fun part. We get to devise a plan and do some research and preparation in advance of the garden season. And then organizing our supplies. So really just preparation for planting. And I'm going to walk you through a way to maybe not spend too much on buying seeds and some affordable ways to look for seeds by visiting seed libraries. Okay, so when it comes to timing, we really have to think about the seasons. And climate change, I would say the past 5 years has really impacted our growing season, even though we have a longer growing season in British Columbia. Now, every region, every province has a hardiness zone, which is given a number. And in Metro Vancouver, our hardiness zone is given the number 8A, 8B. And essentially what that is a geographic area or zone that provides guidance on a plant's survival based on certain conditions in that climate. So plant tags, I don't know if I'm having challenges with my video too, but I will show you after. Oftentimes, if you go to a garden center, they have on a plant tag, they'll tell you the name and a picture of the plant, but on the back of it, they will have the hardiness zone. Now in British Columbia, we have microclimates. So on Victoria or Tofino, there could be a slightly different hardiness zone, whereas in the interior, in the mountains, it will be different as well. So that's just something to note. In the Lower Mainland, again, it's 8A, 8B. Frost dates. So what we tend to have are a first frost and a last frost. And the first frost is often in the fall, anywhere from a range of end of October to the beginning of November. And we're coming up to our last frost. So frost can actually kill off plants if you have them in the garden too soon. And so the last frost is often what they will write on seed packets to say, wait till, you know, the last frost has passed, which is in the spring, anywhere from mid-March, end of March into beginning of April. So just some things to know about timing. And then I know as a teacher, as a garden teacher, we had a lot of heat. I've been teaching in heat waves and atmospheric rivers, heavy rain events that cause flooding. And in June last year, the weather was just really weird. We had some days where it was really warm and mild, and then cold with heavy rain, and that can really shock or hurt plants or what you plant in your garden. So it's really important to be mindful of hardiness zone, frost dates, and extreme weather events. Okay. Most gardeners kind of take a little bit of a reprieve from their garden during the winter months, and I have adjusted these dates because I find that due to kind of the shifting weather patterns and supply chain issues, I've kind of widened the window. So I'm quickly going to just review some of these tips under timing, but we're going to expand on this whole topic. So winterize. When I say winterize a garden bed, essentially what I mean is that I'm not tidying up my garden. I am laying some mulch, whether it's leaves or hay or cover crops that I've planted to protect the soil. And I might leave some seeds for the birds, seed heads for the birds, and I might cut down some plants but leave the roots in the soil to help feed the soil food web. And then I will also store and save seeds. If I haven't done it throughout the course of the garden season, I always want to clean my garden tools and equipment because they can carry plant diseases. And so a solution of hot soapy water and bleach is always good. I want to review in November, December, any of the seed packets I have. Find out if I have any seed packets that are expired or past their shelf life. Maybe throw away any damaged seeds or compost them and clean my storage and make notes of maybe seeds I might need or would like to grow for the following year or the following garden season. And then also we'll talk a bit more about this in depth in December, January. You can get seed catalogs or garden guides for free from garden centers or directly from the seed company, and they have a wealth of information. So we'll cover that in detail. And then from those seed catalogs, you can start to maybe do that research and prepare a list of crops you would like to grow for the current season, but also based on your space. So we'll cover that. And then creating a budget, which is really important, because I find I always spend more on garden supplies or seeds than I actually need to. Here's a really good garden tip as we kind of now talk about assessing your space. So most plants require direct sun exposure for 6 to 8 hours. And they do this because of a process of photosynthesis, where they take the sun's energy, carbon dioxide and water through the roots, and they make sugars to feed the plant and also feed the roots. They go through the roots that feed the bacteria in the soil. So when we have those really long days of summer and consistent weather patterns, that plant is taking the sun's energy and helping it grow and create leafy greens or create fruit or vegetables that we like to eat, and it'll grow at a quicker pace. Okay. We're now going to do an activity, and you're welcome to think about your garden space. And these are some of the key questions I asked myself. I've recently moved to a new garden space, a new community garden, and I'm going to use my community garden as an example in terms of asking these questions, and I'll show you some pictures so you can get an idea. Now, when you're doing this activity, you can either use the camera on your phone, you can write these notes in a notebook or in a computer, whatever works best for you. My preference is always just my phone because it has both the camera and a notes app, and I keep a little album so I can keep track of some of these changes. The first question we really want to ask ourselves is, what is the current size of the space that I'll be gardening in? So that could either be an apartment balcony or patio, a community garden or an allotment, varying sizes. It can be a front yard or a backyard. It's really about the space. And then the second question you want to ask yourself is, how many hours of direct sunlight does this space receive? And direct sunlight during different times of the day. So what I always recommend is early morning, I would say between 9 and 10, afternoon, maybe noon or 1 to 2, and early evening between 4 to 6. So I'm going to show you a picture here. This is my community garden. And in the garden space, you can see in the field adjacent, there is full sun. This is, I believe, August 25th at around 9:23 a.m. And you can see where the light is slowly starting to come in. It's at the front of my garden or community garden bed. But the field has full sun, and I'll answer this question in a second. So I'm starting to get a little bit of sun coming in. Versus this is 4:17 p.m. in the afternoon. I get full sun in my garden space. This is later in September because you can see the difference between the beans, but you can see the difference that sun exposure makes. And just for a little bit of context, this was another image that I took this week on a sunny day in February around, I would say, I think it was around 1 o'clock or 1:30 in the afternoon. So still quite a lot of sun coming in over the winter months. So I will go out to my garden different parts of the day and take pictures and write notes about where the sun is falling. Are there any trees or structures? If you live in an apartment building, there might be some structures that block your sun exposure. And for me, as you can see in the first image, well, yes, I have trees that surround our community gardens, and they actually block a lot of the morning sunlight. So I don't necessarily get full sun in my garden space until about, I would say, maybe 10:30 in the morning. It filters through, and so I get a bit of that shade. You can see in the back in the picture where I have squashes growing, that it's quite shady first thing in the morning. So if there are plants that we will talk about that can grow in a little less sunlight, they might be better suited for the back of that garden space. But things like my beans that are on the trellis really love the heat and direct sun. And so I placed it in a spot where it's getting full sun. Okay. Any areas where water pools or collects. Now, this is more common if you have an outdoor garden space. And I'm really lucky where our garden is. I'll return back to the picture. It's leveled off and we have mulch surrounding all the garden beds, and I've mulched the pathways in between. So when it rains, because I've hilled up the soil, the water kind of pools in the pathways. But if you have a garden space outside, that pooling water can cause a lot of issues, and you probably don't want to plant anything there. So just these kind of key points to be mindful of. Sun protection from the winds and rain. So in British Columbia, we're a temperate coastal rainforest. We get a lot of wind and a lot of rain during our winter months. Now we're getting snow, especially at higher elevations and in the lower mainland. I am really grateful. I'm going to go back to this picture. I have a tree that is just adjacent to my community garden, but that tree actually makes a really nice windbreak and protects my garden. So while it does a slight disservice by blocking some of the sun, I still get about 6 to 7 hours of direct sunlight, especially during the height from spring to summer. And I get a wind protection from the heavy windstorms that we've experienced in the fall and recently as well. So again, some key points. Now, if you live in a balcony, I live in an apartment building, I might only get 3 hours of sun because I'm south facing, and I don't have any structures that block the sunlight or the wind, but the wind can be quite problematic where I am. So again, it applies to if I live in a space that's a little bit different as well, or I'm gardening in a space that's a little bit different as well. So I believe this presentation will be shared, and you can use these questions and work on them a bit more in depth, but these are just some great questions to think about when you're thinking of your own garden space. Okay. All right, right plant, right place. So I wanted to quickly walk through some key gardening terms that are really important. Now, cold hardy versus heat tolerant. Cold hardy are plants that really thrive and grow best in cooler temperatures. And they are things like spinach and lettuce and radishes and cilantro and bok choy or pak choy. And they thrive. And if it gets too hot for them, well, they send up this spindly little seed stalk that flowers and makes seeds, and they end their life cycle. So all plants have certain growing conditions and temperatures that they really grow best in. And knowing that is really going to help you when you're thinking about your garden space and also how much light you get. Heat tolerant are plants that thrive in hot weather. They love it, they grow best, and they want that direct sunlight. They might not go through heat stress. And so those things belong to things like peppers and tomatoes and eggplants and dill and basil and beans. And plants also come in many different families. And the thing you start to learn about plants is when they're in families, they might have a certain pest that bothers that plant family or a disease. They might have similar flavor profiles or grow similar ways, or have similar growing conditions. And so when you start to group plants into families and think about your garden, that will also help you. So for example, the brassica or the mustard family, like our broccoli and cabbage and cauliflower, they all have similar seeds and a similar flavor profile. And they often get attacked by aphids and get a plant disease called clubroot. So just some things to note, and this will also help you in your planting scheme. Okay, a garden tip. I always say, you know, to think about plants that you enjoy or like to eat. Now, I love tomatoes, but they also take up a lot of space in my garden, and I don't probably get enough heat for them to grow really well. And I've tried growing them on my balcony, and it has not succeeded because I only get 3 to 4 hours of sunlight. So instead, I grow different crops, and I will just visit my local farmer and buy the tomatoes straight from him. But I do love growing pak choi and cucumbers, and I have the space in my garden to do that, as well as beans. And so when they flower, remember that most flowers, all flowers from any plant, will attract pollinators. And some plants actually will attract beneficial insects like lady beetles or ladybugs. So keep that in mind when you are planting or planning your garden, that you want to attract these pollinators and beneficial insects. So you can have a mixture of both flowers and vegetables and fruit. Okay. On to devising a plan. So this is the fun part. This is how you extend your garden harvest. And it's really just about doing research. Now, when we go back and think about timing, in December or early January, a lot of those seed companies like West Coast Seeds or Johnny Seeds, they actually release these garden catalogs or seed catalogs, and West Coast Seeds has just released theirs. And these have a wealth of information. I'm just going to flip to the next slide here. They often have a planting chart. And I believe on the West Coast Seeds Guide for 2023, it's on page 72. And I use that as a reference to figure out, okay, what do I want to grow? And the really great thing is, in these garden catalogs, they'll tell you about plant families. They'll tell you about the plant's growing condition, what kind of pests they might be susceptible to, what best conditions that plant's going to grow in, and they will have a number of days. So for example, some crops like radishes, they will grow very quickly within 30 days. You can harvest it from when you plant the seed. Pak choi is ready to eat in about 40 days. And so when I'm planting my garden, I really rely on looking at a month-to-month plan. And you can do this if you are growing things on a balcony or a patio or containers as well. For quick harvest, and then filling the gaps with other things that you would like to grow. So again, we talked about cold hardy, things that grow really well in cooler temperatures. So as I aim to think about my garden, I'm really thinking about things that I can either directly sow, probably mid-March after this cold snap ends, and things I can transplant in my garden that like the cool weather. Seeds or crops such as arugula and radish and peas, kale, Swiss chard, some flowers, marigolds, cilantro, lettuce, spinach. And a lot of these will be able to be harvested quite quickly within anywhere from 30 to about 50 days. And then I start to think about, at the end of April, what do I want to fill those gaps with in May? Do I want to sow some more radishes, or do I want to try some different crops? And crop rotation is a whole different topic. We won't get time to cover it today, but that is also part of garden planning. I also want to think about maybe starting some seeds indoors to give those plants a head start, especially if the weather is going to be a little bit unpredictable. And I really want to wait until the soil is consistently warm so we're not having these fluctuations. And so really I will take out a piece of paper and just start to list, first of all, everything I want to grow. and kind of the months that I would like to grow in. And I will show you at the end what a planting chart for West Coast Seeds looks like when I'm done the presentation so you can see it. All right. Organizing your supplies is really, really key. And this is the preparation for planting. So one thing that you really want to do is to wash all your pots of any debris which might have harbored diseases. And I always say a good hot soapy water mix with a little bit of bleach is pivotal to clean and to sterilize all your equipment. You should consistently clean your garden tools throughout the garden season, but most people will either do it in the fall. And if you haven't done in the fall, then the winter time, February is a good time to do that task, or even early March. Sometimes for my hand tools, I'll just take a nice bristle brush or a cloth and just brush off all the dirt and then just rinse my tools again in that hot soapy water solution. And the one thing I really love to do is to remove some of the rust, sharpen my pruners and oil my pruners. Other name for it is secateurs, with a little bit of mineral oil, so they're ready for the season ahead. The next aspect is I highly recommend investing in a grow light system. I bought my grow light system, I think about 8 or 9 years ago, and it has a wicking mat built into it and a platform with seed trays where it bottom waters my seed trays, and I can move the light up and down so when the seeds are growing, they're closest to the seeds. And a lot of different garden centers or suppliers carry this. It's a lifelong investment. You'll only have to replace the actual lights, and it helps you get that advantage, that jump start to your garden season, especially if we're having unpredictable weather. So also to sterilize your seed trays that might come with your grow lights. And I've, again, reused mine for 8 years over and over, and I clean them every time I plant, just to prevent any issues with disease or soil-borne diseases when I start my seedlings. The other thing is to organize your supplies. So for seeds, if I've done my seed inventory in the late winter, I look for Seedy Saturday events or seed swaps, and you can find them through some local organizations. You can try the Seeds of Diversity website that lists local seed swaps or seed suppliers. And lots of libraries now have seed libraries, just similar to a library book, where you can actually give them seeds that you've collected. So this is a great way to kind of get access to free seeds instead of buying them. And you can visit many are occurring already and will probably continue until mid-March. So there might be some in your neighborhood. And again, the Seeds of Diversity website's a good place to start to look for some of those. Farm Folk, City Folk is another good organization that will list the different Seedy Saturday events that are happening in different communities across British Columbia. And then what I also like to do is I have really old seeds, and I will germinate them on a damp paper towel in a slightly open Ziploc bag and make sure the paper towel is moist. I normally will put 10 seeds in there to get a ratio of how good the seed packet is. And if I find that the germination's really bad, then I'll compost the seeds. But if the germination's okay, then I'll try and use up all of those seeds so nothing gets wasted. And the other thing, as a community gardener, I often just barter seeds, similar to a seed library, but in person with other gardeners. And it's kind of a fun experience to just engage with other gardeners and learn as well. So another thing, again, preparing the garden beds, right, is compost. And so you want to add a thin layer, 3 to 4 inches of either compost or manure to your garden beds in the spring. I postpone this sometimes till late March because a lot of insects will overwinter in our soil. And so right now in my garden, I have a layer of mulch, which is straw, as you saw in the picture. And I planted cover crops, which actually add nutrients back into the soil. And so what I do is I just cut the cover crops. They're not too big. They're only about 3 inches high. Cut it and I'll lay it over my garden to decompose. And then as it starts to decompose, I'll just gently kind of rake it in, not to disturb the soil too much, and just plant over that. So that ensures my soil is healthy, also making sure that when your soil is healthy, it gives you an advantage to planting as well. All right. A garden tip. So this is one thing I recommend to everybody, even if you have challenges in your garden, is to keep either a garden journal in a notebook, or use your phone if it's easier, or your computer. Take lots of pictures, write lots of notes, and document things such as, you know, what have been some of the challenges, the weather patterns, plant health, any pest or disease issues. That's going to help you, and capture as many pictures as possible. So in this picture, I had some issues with the calendula flower, and I don't know if it was because it was transplanted, or because the soil was poor, or because it was just the fluctuations in weather, but the seed head is very odd and the petals were distorted. So that kind of gave me an advantage for the growing season ahead. All right. So that is the end of my presentation. It went quicker than I anticipated, but I will stop it and open it up for questions. So just bear with me here. Okay. Are there any questions? I was going to show everybody how to.
I have one question, please.
Yeah, go ahead, Joseph.
Yes. Okay, I have a balcony, and I have a big box that my disability provide me. And you're saying that I should grow now lettuce, spinach, and Swiss chard. Is that what
Right.
No?
Yep, spinach and Swiss chard, yes.
Okay. The other thing is, I did put some. Hold on a minute. I put some blueberries and raspberry last year.
Oh, and you grew them in containers?
No, I put it in my box because I have a heater in my box, and I covered my box with like a greenhouse type.
Oh, wow. And how much sun do you get, Joseph?
In the winter time, I don't get too much sun.
Right, but in the height of summer, you get a lot of sun.
Yeah, and I made a mistake. Last year because, you know, I was looking at some different things to grow stuff, and I had little bugs flying, and then I heard to spray some soap and stuff like that around. But what happened is I used the wrong container. I used Tabex, and I kill everything.
Yeah, yeah.
But now,
and it's also. Oh, continue on, please.
But the thing is, my wife, she's not happy with my result because last year I didn't grow anything. And I met you before at GF Strong because because you told me I should have radishes and this and this. And I talked to Graham. I said, I need to speak to her because she was ahead of the game. And now, that's why I'm asking you. I'm going to get some more. I have a lot of soil because, you know, the wood box they did, the disability. I don't know if you saw it before.
Yes, I did.
That's what I have. And I have those, and I put the water in, and it's moist. But the thing is, what I'll do, I'll follow your direction, and I'll grow some lettuce, spinach, and everything else. And in May, I'll put some squash and carrots. What do you think?
And so this is what I wanted to show everybody. This is the West Coast Seeds 2003 gardening guide. So if you visit their website, and I can happily share the links, or you can go to any garden center and pick this up where their seeds are completely free. So I love it because on page 72 for South Coastal BC, they have a planting chart. And at the top, they have the months, and across here they have like, you know, all the crops, when to start it. And this is a good reference point. I always say use it as a guide because our weather keeps changing. So I use this. I go to this page and then I'm like, okay, what do I want to start? And it's really fascinating, like broad beans, you could plant them in November up until April, they grow. And gardening is a little bit about experimenting, right? I mean, Joseph, I've killed many plants, but I will say that it's helped me build my confidence and learn what to do and what not to do. That's how we become good gardeners. So page 72 of the West Coast Seeds Guide. And what I also love is, like I was saying, I'm going to try and find radishes here. The great thing is this is alphabetical. So if I just skipped the radishes. Where are they? Well, actually, I'm going to go to, it's rutabaga. Okay, so my favorite radish to grow is on the bottom of this page. It's great for containers, and it's a tried, tested, true variety. It's called the French breakfast radish. And when I look at this guide, it tells me within 25 to 30 days, I can harvest this radish. I mean, that's a pretty quick turnaround. That's why I really love radishes. And I mean, there's all kinds of different varieties. They're pink inside, there's wasabi radish. So these seed catalogs are amazing. If you take the time just to, you know, spend and read and learn, it's a free resource. And that's why I love them. And it really helps with planning. And for you, I think if you're growing things, one thing people forget, if you're growing things in like small containers, that soil needs to have some compost or maybe some like worm castings, which is just like worm manure, which is really great because it gives some like fertility to the soil, right? Because when it rains and we don't protect our containers or don't cover them, all those good nutrients fall out of the containers too. So some of that planning is like amending the soil and taking care of the soil, whether you do it in the fall or you do it in the spring, it's really important. Personally, I like to do adding the compost and manure in the spring. And I always say, get out in the garden when you first start growing and just like constantly check on the plants. See what impact weather is having on the plants, because you can protect your plants or move them or adjust, but weather plays a big part on plants. And that's why I was saying those questions about how much sun am I getting? You know, do I have wind protection? Do I have a windbreak? Is there anywhere water pools in my garden? All these questions are helpful. So I don't know if I answered your question, but it sounds like you're growing some interesting things this year.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. And keep in touch because I'll see if I can help with some more tips in any way.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? So one thing I kind of wanted to show everybody, I didn't get a chance before, I was talking about the plant hardiness zone. So I apologize, this webcam, my other webcam stopped working, but this is on my computer. This is a bulb, it's called ornamental onions, and they're a flower, and I planted them, and they're a perennial plant, and they keep coming up year after year. But on the back of this plant tag, I've kind of highlighted here, you'll see it's really hard to see. It says either zone 4 to 8. So it tells you the zone that you can plant the plant in, the best growing conditions. I also have oregano on the back of the plant tag. Sorry, I apologize, is not the best. It says zone 11. So oregano is fine to grow up to zone 11, right? And oregano is a Mediterranean herb. It loves hotter, warmer climates. So the plant tags are really useful. Also, if you visit a garden center or a nursery and you're thinking about doing some garden planning, just pull out the plant tag and read it. It's there to help you learn. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? I see Lena Wu, you have your hand up?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I have some questions to ask.
Sure, go ahead.
I have two questions. First one is, at the end of the season, for those old plants, can I just pull them out, leave them in the garden box as a compost, and also cover the soil for the next year? Is that okay or not?
Well, it depends on the plant, right? So if the plant is like disease or has decay, or it's like, there's some problems with it, you don't want to leave it because that's going to impact your soil. But what I do is like, say, can you give me a name of a plant that is in your planter box so I can help guide you?
One is the radish.
The radish, okay.
And
Sometimes,
also
yeah.
The Brussels sprout.
The Brussels sprouts, yeah.
Yeah.
You could leave some of the leaves, like just tear them up and leave them. The challenge is with a garden soil versus a container. I would say do that in your garden bed. In what tends to happen is in a container, people use like a potting mix, which is not soil, unless you're using a garden soil mix. But what I would say is cover all your containers with either leaves or straw. And if you're in a garden, like a community garden or a backyard, you can either use leaves, straw, or cover crops. And cover crops are amazing because you scatter the seed. I had a lot of birds eat the seed, but that's okay. And then I do that in mid to late August. And so what it does, it creates like this mat of like plants. And what happens is in the spring, there's no weeds. They can't get, because the weeds need light, right? And all the roots of those cover crops have nitrogen and all kinds of, benefits to the soil, nutrients that the soil needs. And so what I do is I will gently either pull it or just cut it down and let it decompose further in my garden, let it sit for a little bit. And then as it breaks down, it actually creates compost, humus. And so that's really good because it feeds all the things that live on the surface of the soil, like the microorganisms and the worms, that'll further help break it down. Soil is a very complex topic. I could talk about it for hours, but having healthy soil is also an important part of garden planning. And I think we forget that when it rains or there's a lot of wind, our soil depletes, it erodes. And so we need to protect the soil. And I think a lot of gardeners forget to do that in the wintertime. And so that's why we use that term about winterizing your garden, which is essentially, saving some stuff for the wildlife, habitat for wildlife and food, but also protecting the soil and making sure the soil is healthy. So for the upcoming spring, your garden is ready to be planted in.
Okay. So if I do not cover the garden bed with the straw, what will happen? Is this good or bad?
It's not necessarily good or bad. I think it's also your growing space, right? If you're growing things in containers, you could essentially just add a little bit more compost in the spring to replenish the soil. And that would work for you. And I do that with the containers on my patio balcony as well. I will either move them or put burlap over them just to protect them. Because we have a lot of birds where I am. So I just do it to kind of protect the soil itself. And then in the spring, I take the burlap off and then I just add a bit of worm castings, which is again, a manure made from worm poop, but it's really, really good for your soil. And I mix a bit of that. But if a plant has a disease or a problem with that soil, then I would dump out the soil, clean my pots and start fresh, because the soil will deplete of nutrients as well in containers, unlike growing outside. But you still want to keep adding nutrients and amending your soil every season, every spring.
Okay. And
did that make sense?
Yes, yes. Second
Okay.
question is, when we grow the vegetables, usually we give the fertilizer before we plant vegetables, or in the middle of the middle growing of the vegetables.
Yeah, it depends on your garden space. So right now, like I have an herb garden and I have, things that will keep coming back every year, like my sage and my oregano and thyme. But what I do is I take a bit of compost and I just kind of sprinkle it at the base of those plants just to give them like some nutrient support, right? If I have spaces in my garden where there's nothing growing, then that's when I'm going to add more manure. Sometimes you can add, I know people use slow release fertilizers for containers. I don't use that for my containers. Like I said, I use the vermicasting or worm casting, but it also is a personal choice. And I think your growing space. So it all depends on what works best for you, as long as there's no pesticides or chemicals, because that will impact wildlife, and organic gardening is really important.
I have some in my balcony and some in the community garden. So both the situations apply to me. So in this case, usually what time I give the fertilizer to the vegetables?
Yeah, I would say maybe sometimes with community gardens, like I know in mine, they organize a day where they have compost deliveries, or they might have a compost sale. So it depends on your community garden. If they're providing that compost, I would connect with maybe the coordinator for the gardens and ask. I know there's 80 gardeners at my community garden. So unfortunately this year we're not getting compost, but they're having a compost sale. So I'm going to buy some compost, and I also make my own worm castings. I have a worm bin. So what I do is I make my own compost and I add that to the soil, but I use lots of different methods. I also cover cropped. I would recommend cover cropping in late August next year. And cover crop seeds are quite affordable, and there's lots of places that will, you can buy it or either get it through a seed library maybe. And you just sprinkle a little bit of seeds and they sit on the surface of the soil and they will grow and they will help add nutrients. So lots of different methods based on, you know, what your space is, what your needs are. And timing, it's okay. We don't have a set timeline. I think it's thinking about your garden in a bigger context and, you know, planning in advance, maybe making notes. Because if you know you have to do compost, you give yourself a 2-week window, right? But if it snows in March, you might not be adding compost to your garden. So that's where thinking about weather and planning also plays a part. But if your season gets slightly delayed, that's okay too. Just know that, you know, you can only control weather so much, but planning and having some notes will help you in that process.
So you means the rainy days is not good time for give the fertilizer, is that right?
You can on a rainy day, just not on a snowy day.
Okay.
Yeah.
So which day is better? Dry days better or the wet days better?
I would say a dry day, because if it
Okay.
rains, then all that compost is just going to keep going through the soil. So you definitely want a dry day to add compost to your garden space.
Okay. I mean, not only the compost, but also like the manure or chicken manure. Or, so in this case,
Yeah.
what kind, when should I put them? Or in the middle or the beginning of the grow?
It depends on, again, what you have planted, Lena. So you can, if you have plants already there, you can just put a couple layers, a couple inches just at the base of some of those plants. If you have nothing planted, then add manure to the whole space. And there's so many types of manure, rabbit, chicken, goat, sheep, steer, you know, there's mushroom manure, there is kelp. I mean, any kind of manure you can think of. Vermicasting, feel free to use whichever is to your liking.
Because I watched the video, I saw many people, they put the fertilizer before they grow, maybe at the beginning of the season or in the middle of the season.
Oh, I
So
see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you definitely want to add the manure before you plant, and you want to add the manure. I would say a couple of weeks before
of the growing season, or
yeah,
at the middle.
At the beginning of the growing season, and if at the end of the growing season, I would say add mulch or cover crops to your garden. So that would be in the fall or the winter, like preparing. That's when you want to mulch it. I mulch my garden throughout the growing season just because it helps maintains soil temperature and prevents the soil from eroding, but you don't have to mulch throughout. Most people will tend to add a leaf mulch, which is accessible, leaves are everywhere, or straw to their garden bed in the fall.
Okay.
I missed the presentation. Was this recorded?
I believe so, and it was live streamed.
Okay, great. So I'll be able to watch that. I
Yes.
really like the stuff you do, and
Oh,
I
thank
learned so
you.
much. So how could I miss it? But I did. So well,
That's
I'll
okay.
watch
I
the
believe
recording.
it will be available. And like I said, if you have any questions, I will pass on my email. My job really as a master gardener too, and garden educator, is to help people, learn these skills, important skills, and feel confident growing their own food. Right.
Well, I always get the feeling from master gardeners how much they enjoy gardening and sharing their information. So yeah, I'd have no hesitancy asking.
And I do hope there's some gardening programs at GF Strong this year. That would be great. It's such a beautiful space.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are going to have garden at GF Strong this year again.
Nice. Yeah, the plantings there were so beautiful last year. I was just admiring them.
I know, but you know what? Because of the hummingbirds, they ate all my tomatoes.
You sure it was the hummingbirds? I feel like it could be some other creatures, but hummingbirds.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Joseph. No, go ahead, please.
No, I don't know, because it seems that I spoke to Graham, and a lot of people who had plant there, they said the hummingbirds were damaging all the plants.
Oh, well, interestingly, hummingbirds don't really eat plants. They eat a lot of flying insects, and they love plants that have like long tubular flowers because they have this long tongue. And they really just are after the sugar nectar because it's a source of energy. It might be some other birds. Birds sometimes will nip at tomato plants if you don't net them. So I doubt it's the hummingbird. It could be another type of bird that's doing that damage. Yeah.
Okay.
We want the hummingbirds. They eat all the mosquitoes in the
Plus,
garden.
they're gorgeous.
They're stunningly beautiful. Yes. I always love to add flowers to my garden. And that's the other thing I say is, if you're thinking about growing vegetables, grow some flowers too. Add that as part of your garden plan. And, marigolds I find are really easy. So are cosmos and zinnias. And they're just lovely flowers to like cut and bring inside and enjoy as well.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
And marigolds and many others are edible. I just add them to my salad.
Yeah, marigolds are edible. There's a flower called calendula that is edible as well, and it attracts the bees. There's this beautiful green bee called the green spot bee, and it's one of those flowers that it just loves. So for the diversity of all the pollinators out there, it's great to have some flowers.
Thank you so much for everything, and I hope you'll send me your email.
Yes.
Any more questions? Thank you so much, Sharlene, and have a good weekend.
You too, Joseph. Thank you so much for attending today. And to Maureen, it was nice to see you again.
Thank you. Yeah, well,
Can
better late than never.
Can you email? Can you email us the PowerPoint you just put on this lecture? So
it'll be up on the YouTube channel. It takes at least, I'm not sure exactly how long, but probably in the next week or so it'll be.
I think I can PDF. I will PDF my presentation slides, and I will add a link with some of the resources that I talked about in this presentation. I think I'll email Shireen, and she will forward them out to all the attendees today.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Thanks so much, Sharlene. That was really great.
Yes, it was. Thank you very much.
Oh, I'm glad my sound worked. I didn't have any more technical glitches. Yeah, and please keep me posted if you have any questions along with your garden planning. I'm happy to answer them. That's part of my work and what I really enjoy.
Thank you, Sharlene. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
everyone who came.